Close enough. Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Lafourche Levee District for Tuesday, April 15th. Please rise, and Brett, will you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Mary, roll call, please.
Keith Guidry.
Here.
Gavin Cullen.
Here.
Roland Giroux.
Here.
Mitch Daniels. Brett DeRoe.
Here.
Scott Harrigan.
Here.
Brian Marks.
Here.
Amy Rome.
Here.
Monty Vegas. Mr. President, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you. All right, gentlemen, you've been presented the minutes from last month's meeting. I'd like to move by Max, second by Brian. All in favor that we accept?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, on the president's report, we need to adopt the resolution for our millage rate for 2025, and Nick will explain it to us.
Sure, thank you, Mr. President. So I'll change screens here, or rather on the screen right now, you're looking at last year's millage rates for the constitutionally authorized millage. The 2023 millage rate that we levied was our standard 4.86 mills. In 2024, which was a reassessment year, because of the overall property valuation being lower throughout the parish, we were authorized by state law to levy up to 5.15 or 5.01 mils, to make up the difference in our revenues. The board, though, elected last year to keep the millages where they were for last year since the economy was still recovering, so we levied the standard 4.86 mils through the constitutional millage. For the ad valorem millage, which was the one voted in place by the residents some years back, we levied the standard 5 mils as it was originally voted by the people. Since we levied the same millage rates, but they were levied against lower property value, our income for 2024 was decreased by over $130,000 by us keeping our millages where they were with the decreased property value. So I'll switch screens here and show what our executive committee has recommended for our board to approve for this year, or to consider for this year. And then after we discuss, we'll need a roll call vote to approve whatever millages. So breaking it down here, we've got the constitutional millage and our ad valorem millage. Last year, like I mentioned, we levied 4.86 for the Constitution and 5.0 for the ad valorem. And the maximum we were able to, by law, levy was 5.56 for Constitution, 5.71 for ad valorem. So this looks at if we can change these values to whatever we want to discuss and consider, and it'll show you this is what we ended up levying last year was just under 2 million, when typically we're over 2 million for revenue that we collect. And this is what we would be collecting this year if we'd adopt whatever millages we put here, and this would be the difference. And then down here, depending on what millage rates we consider, would show you for, say, a $250,000 home, $100,000 home, or a few different examples here. So the executive committee was recommending that we go up to 5.0 mils for the Constitution, which is still half a mil less than what we're authorized to, and same for the ad valorem, going up to 5.25. So for a $100,000 home, that would be a difference to the taxpayer in 97 cents. For this year, $150,000 home would be $2.93 more they would be paying. $250,000 would be 6.82, so 200,000 somewhere in the middle there would be about $5 extra. For homes on the higher end, a $500,000 home, it would be an increase in $16.57. Or for $1 million home, the difference would be $36.07 extra that they'd be paying versus what they paid last year. But for us, the difference would be over $150,000 that we'd be able to kind of recoup a little bit of what we lost last year by keeping the millage rates where they were on that lower year. So these two rates, the 5.0 for Constitution, 5.25 for ad valorem, is what was recommended by the executive committee. So if y'all want to see what a different rate would do, we have the technology as what was it, $100,000 mammoth?
I think we're good with that, huh?
We need a motion to just set the rule.
Yeah, we would need, it's a very formal motion we'd have to read, so I can do that if y'all are okay with approving these rates.
I move.
Yeah.
Okay, so this would be Resolution 2025.01. Be it resolved that the following millages are hereby levied on the 2025 tax roll on all properties subject to taxation by the South Lafourche Levy District. Ad valorem, 104,707, 5.000 mils. Construction and maintenance, 104,7086, 5.250 mils. Be it further resolved that the proper administrative officials of the parish of Lafourche, state of Louisiana, be and they are hereby empowered, authorized, and directed to spread said taxes as here and above set forth upon the assessment roll of said parish for the year 2025, and to make the collection of the taxes imposed for and on behalf of the taxing authority according to law, and that the taxes herein levied shall become a permanent lien and privilege on all property subject to taxation as herein set forth, and collection thereof shall be enforceable in the manner provided for by law. Foregoing resolution read in full, and the roll was called, the adoption thereof. So Mayor will now do a roll call vote.
Keith Guidry,
Yes.
Gavin Colley,
Yes.
Roland Curall,
Yes.
Mitch Stanoff is absent, Brett DeRoche,
Yes.
Scott Terrio,
Yes.
Brian Marks,
Yes.
McNeely Rowe,
Yes.
and Monty Vegas is absent. It's unanimous.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So,
Okay, moving on, the ALBL workshop, coming close. Mary and Amy put together stuff for your packet. Make sure you bring that with you, so when you check in for the tax exempt and everybody signed their, what is
They
it?
just need to sign the tax exempt,
Yeah.
which is
And
this
return
page.
that, yeah.
Sign dated, turn that into the hotel because they won't allow me to do it for everybody anymore. And use that envelope to put your receipts in and just turn the whole envelope back into Amy when you get back. And that's it.
Okay. And the Tier 2.1 form due annually, May 15th, correct? Yeah. You have that? Yeah.
They have it.
Okay.
Some have already turned those back in.
Okay.
those are your financial disclosure
Right.
statements
Make
sure
as
that-
a member of a state board or commission.
Okay, moving on, Executive Committee report. Scott?
Appreciate it, Mr. President. So we met back on Tuesday, April 1st, with the Executive Committee to discuss various topics, including proposed budget for fiscal year 2026, the millage rates, and the semi-quantitative risk assessment update, which Mr. Mathern will update us on later in the meeting. I've reviewed all the minutes, and I recommend we accept as is.
Okay, the recommendation of our chairman to accept the committed request. Moved by Mr. Rowland, second by Brett. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Okay, audience comments. Mr. Terrio, you're here to...
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Board. Before I get into the reason for my presentation, I'd like to mention, John kind of reminded me, Kiwanis is having a golf tournament Saturday, Kiwanis of South Lafourche. If there's any questions or anything, you can ask John. John knows more about it than I do. But anyway, I want to mention that. I'm going to help him. I'm part of the Kiwanis organization also. The reason for me coming here is, if you recall, last time I was here, I mentioned a festival for the Golden Meadow Rotary Organization. We completed that festival, and it was a success. We were hoping to have more people there, more locals to celebrate and enjoy the catfish. But we did get a lot of sponsors. And just to mention, our income for these festivals, we do 2 a year, are with the sponsorships. We don't make that much money on the people that come in and buy a bracelet to wear around and eat all the food they can eat. Our money is primarily from sponsorships. With these sponsorships, we pay for 4 full-pay scholarships to Nichols, so that we are very proud of. We also pay for a leadership program for high school students. It's called a Riley program, and I'll get involved with giving you a little bit more description on that. We also do small things around the area. For Easter, for example, we did an event today at the elementary school. We have a Christmas parade that we present. We also do about 10 to 12 needy families, providing food and gifts. And we also do between 6 and 10 bicycles a year for Craig Weber to give out in his program. The Riley program, which I'm going to leave some forms here. I'll probably end up leaving before the end of your meeting. This is what it looks like. I'll leave up here in the front. And I'm going to just read this short paragraph. It meets in person and be given tasks to complete over the next 3 days that are in competition with other teams. These competitions are designed to allow all Riley participants to show off their leadership talents with activities that challenge their physicality, creativity, problem solving, intellectual abilities, public speaking, Rotary knowledge, and most of all, the ability to work together as a team. The core of the Riley program is DICS, personality test that each young adult takes. Throughout the program, they will be discovering in depth their own personality strengths, weaknesses, as well as strengths and weaknesses of other personality types. During this competition process, they will be taught and coached on how to use their knowledge to lead their team and how to support other leaders in the team environment. This is available for anyone in 14 to 18 years of age. They don't have to be a resident of Lafourche, so if you have a son or grandson or daughter or granddaughter or whatever, they are allowed to participate in this program. Just feel free to give me a call or give any Rotary member a call if you'd like to have further information. And there's also a couple of websites that are available in this form. Thank you for your time, Mr. President, and I look forward to helping the community as much as I can.
Thank you. We appreciate what you guys do. Okay, moving on. Executive Director report, Nick.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. First item is the acceptance of the FY 2026 budget. So the 2026 budget is in your packet. It's the same budget as proposed last month for your review. So I can answer any questions that you might have, but if not, I recommend that the board move to adopt the fiscal year 2026 operating budget as proposed.
Any questions for Nick? Okay. Moved by Scott, second by Brian. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next up is the semi-quantitative risk assessment. So this is the effort that the Corps of Engineers has been doing as part of our effort to get back recertified and into the Corps' rehabilitation and inspection program. This has been over a 2-year process, and this started when Wendell was still here. The crew from Jacksonville District in Florida had started to come and inspect in person the levee system, and this is a collection. It's headquartered out of Jacksonville, but the group pulls in subject matter experts from all over the country. We had guys from Texas, Denver, Nashville, Memphis, and Pennsylvania that had come down to look at our system and provide input to this whole effort. Last Tuesday and Wednesday, I met with the team at the Corps of Engineers District Office in New Orleans. We reviewed the results of the breach modeling that they've been running, as well as their life sim models. So the breach modeling, they're the team is very confident that the only reason we may have a breach in our levee is if we have severe overtopping, that the water of storm surge just gets so high it completely overtops our levee by multiple feet for several hours. 8 hours or over really is what they're looking at. That we could potentially have a washout of the backside of our levee, which would then cause the overall levee to fail. That's a similar situation that happened in Braithwaite some years ago. I believe it was either Gustav or Ike, where the levee itself didn't fail. The levee was overtopped, and the waves hitting the back of the levee scoured enough to where there was nothing on the backside holding the levee, and so the whole thing collapsed and all of Braithwaite was flooded. So that's what they perceive to be our biggest threat, that we have other questionable issues around our levee, but by the time those issues become actual issues, we would have already overtopped. So that seems to be the driver, is our elevation. So the way they ran this breach modeling was they forced a breach to happen in the model. They picked 5 different locations around the levee system where they thought it was potential to see these breaches happen. And they modeled an instance of what we call piping. So piping is when you'll have seepage that'll go through the levee because you have so much water on the outside that's forcing its way through. And eventually you can have, whether it's a straight stream or however the water finds its way from the outside of the system to the inside, you'd have a steady pipe of water that's coming through. And then as water goes through faster and faster, that hole gets bigger. So for the modeling purposes, they start with a piping opening that's 1 foot in diameter. And they run different elevations of water on the outside for the duration of their model storm. And as the water goes through that hole, it gets bigger and bigger until eventually you have a giant gap in the levee that's just causing water to completely flood into the system. So looking at the results of the model, and you can see on this screen capture, they have different control points where they model these breaches to happen. And it shows how much the inside of the system would flood and where it would flood at however many hours past that breach starting to happen. They modeled the system flooding for 4 days. And so what that equates to is having high water from storm surge, 8, 9, 10 feet, coming into the system for 4 days. Now, typically they run this with river levees, right? And so that makes a lot of sense. You're gonna have high water for however long it takes you to plug it up. When I brought that to their attention, we talked it through and they realized, okay, maybe 24 hours is kind of the max that we should be doing this. So they're currently rerunning these models to stop the flooding at 24 hours. Because typically you'd have water receding by then from a storm surge. Even if not, even if we have some kind of, unique storm incident where we would have water staying high 8, 9, 10 feet for over 24 hours, we would be on the phone with the Governor's Office of Homeland Security Emergency Preparedness telling them to put National Guard Black Hawk helicopters in the air to come and plug a breach with sandbags, right? We're not going to let water come into the system. There's no instance in reality we would allow this kind of flooding for 4 straight days. It's just not reality. And so they all agreed, which has been one of the great parts about this process, is that they're very reasonable, they listen to our input, and they're willing to completely rerun models and change things to show what would actually happen. And it's important at this point because they're at the very tail end of their whole process, that hopefully during the summer they'll have their final report to give to their superiors, and then it'd be released to us. And then the other part of this is that all of this is sent to FEMA. And that would help FEMA determine our flood risk in terms of, do we need to be remapped? How could this potentially affect our flood insurance rates at all? Showing that we have such a little risk for actually flooding. And even if we do, we know the worst possible case scenario of how that flooding would affect the area. And so I think just our preliminary run where they just stopped the model at 24 hours at full height. Now that's not showing the actual result, because realistically over 24 hours, you're not gonna have 8 feet of water and then it just stops, right? You're gonna have 8 feet of water that slowly recedes over that 24-hour period. So it's not going to be anywhere near the flooding that we actually saw when they just stopped that 4-day model at 24 hours. So I'm interested to see what that's going to show. But they use that breach modeling to then inform what they call life sim. So this is a simulator that shows, based on the population that they estimate to remain and not evacuate during a storm, which, talking with local authorities, first responder organizations, emergency preparedness, they estimate that in a category 3, probably about 40% of the population down here might evacuate. Originally, they were saying blanket across the board, only 40% evacuates. And that was another instance I said, I know it's not apples to apples when you're talking storm surge and category storms, because the category storm is not how much water we're going to get. The category storm is a wind rating, right? And so there's no magical formula that's going to tell you, if you have a category 4 storm, category 5 storm, how much water you're going to get. There are so many factors like trajectory, how fast the storm is moving. You can't just say, well, in a category 1 storm, we're only going to get 4 feet of water. Category 5, we're going to get 23. We can't say that. And so I brought that to their attention, saying, I may grant you 40% in a category 3, but if you've got a category 5 storm, you're going to have a lot more than just 40% of the people down here evacuating. You know, we're going to make sure that we're telling everybody, if Katrina is coming along the route of Ida, we are getting on the radio, we're getting on TV, and we're telling everybody to get out of here, right? I mean, that's not something that you want to take a chance with. So we're not going to have 40% of our population staying. But even with all that, we have a population of about 20,000 people within the Levee district. Assuming 40% of those people evacuate, the worst possible scenario, with 4 days of water coming in, they estimate about 600 potential lives lost, which is a lot of life lost, right? But if we look at that being the worst possible scenario, overly estimating the number of people that are going to stay, and looking at 4 days of water coming in, obviously the real numbers are going to be significantly lower than that. So I'm waiting to see when they rerun all this, what that's going to show. But overall, again, you know, now that we're at the tail end of this process, it's been really cooperative and a lot of good discussion, and them actually listening to what we've experienced, not just saying, well, this is what our procedure or our formula says, so this is what we have to do, and you're wrong no matter what you say. That hasn't been our experience. It was a little fun when one of the geotechnical engineers who works in the New Orleans district and doesn't particularly have a lot of faith in our system kind of poked his head in to see what was going on, and the risk team was explaining to him what their findings were. He was kind of dumbfounded and was arguing back, well, what about this problem? And they were able to explain, well, yeah, it is a problem, but this is a bigger problem. And so he was a little flustered and was surprised that we were performing as well as we were. But we know the system that we have, and so we weren't surprised at all. So I'll update you guys as those models get rerun and they get submitted to us. So in the future, we'll see what those more realistic numbers look like. Cool. Any questions on that before we move on? That was a lot of information, sorry. I could talk for days about this risk assessment because it's been kind of fascinating. But so next, I'm a little more casual today because we did have our gate closure exercise, as we posted on Facebook, showing that we were going to be having road closures. So again, this is every year. We like to do a one-day exercise of testing all of our gates. Right here, we're looking at the road barrier that we have to deploy along Highway 3235 in La Rose. This is a series of pedestals and stop logs that our team have to put in place and create seals all the way up. Now, the reason, again, that this was chosen was that the highway here, DOTD did not allow us to build high enough of a ramp to not need this barrier because they were worried about people not being able to stop in time. So that's why that barrier is in place. Once we deployed that, took it down, we then moved over here to the Delta Farm road gate. Now this one is towards the back of Delta Farm. The Mercer boat launch you see behind the guys moving the gate, that's the location where this is. And so this is the the road gate that was installed by the Corps several years ago. This is unfortunately one of the lowest points in the levee because the Corps only built this wall and structure to 11 feet, and we're at 13 feet on either side. Then this is the LA1 gate in Golden Meadow at the Golden Meadow lock, the Lee, Ontario lock there. So this is actually footage from last year because I had to come back and get ready for the board meeting. But all three gates went up and were picked up without a hitch, and so a couple minor questionable issues that we noticed, bolts missing or little things like that we're going to be able to remedy in plenty enough time before hurricane season. So that was definitely a success. And I definitely want to publicly thank our field team that, we've got a really great crew right now that great attitudes. They're very knowledgeable. They love what they do. They love working for our community to protect our community. And days like today really kind of show their dedication and, getting out of what they normally do. I mean, some of these guys are in, just driving equipment all day and much different activities today, and everybody pitched in and did a great job, so hats off to them for sure. Next, update on our Breton Canal Weir. On March 31st, you guys may have seen that we posted on Facebook an update on the first time that we actually used the Breton Canal Weir for its purpose of trying to lower the bayou more quickly than just our siphon system could. We had unusually high water in the intracoastal and south of the Lee, Ontario lock, and so the water was getting higher and higher in the bayou. To make sure we didn't flood the town of Golden Meadow, we ended up opening all 4 bays of the Breton Canal Weir completely open for a while, and everything went off without a hitch. We were really excited about the performance. Got several of our guys out there to see how we opened them, and we're excited to be able to use this in the future. It worked perfectly. And then the last item on my report, we discussed this a little in the executive committee meeting. In the past, we've tried to protect the shorelines, the toe of our levee, with sheet pile installation. The biggest project that I know we did recently was in this area along Section A East in Golden Meadow, where we have a large open water area on the inside that when you get high winds, those winds cause waves to violently erode away the inside of the toe of that levee. Looking at especially on the western side, there are plenty of locations where we have no more marsh up against the toe of the levee. It's just open water and then the toe of the levee. And so going and identifying the most problematic areas, we'd like to start, and there's a good bit of funding in the next year's budget to do a much bigger version of this. But we'd like to start now with a small purchase of some sheet piles to protect what we feel are the most in danger and the most vulnerable areas of the shoreline of our levee. We already do have an area-wide permit to be able to install sheet piles around the entire levee system. We got that a few years ago. So permits are already in place and we can just use those. So there won't be any delay. We would just need to actually purchase the sheet piles. We want to go with 12-foot sheet piles because we installed 8-foot sheet piles here along A East, and a lot of those are already missing because it was just too violent of wave action and not enough of the sheet pile actually sticking in the mud to stay put. So we kind of learned our lesson there. It was a little experiment for us. So we'd rather go with 12-foot sheet piles and get a lot sticking in the ground to make sure that those are going to last for a long time. So it's beyond my purchasing authority, so I'm bringing it to the board here. We've been working on getting quotes from companies locally and regionally. And so the lowest quote right now, we're still waiting for a couple to come in, but the lowest quote right now is just under $155,000 for just under 20,000 linear feet of sheet pile. So I'd ask the board to approve us making that purchase for up to $155,000 worth of sheet pile.
We still have to wait for those other 2 quotes?
We'll wait for the other quotes. How many do we have left that we're waiting on? Just two? But we did have a local company that came in pretty low, below everybody else. There was one other company that came in with a lower quote, but it was it wasn't a comparable product. And it'd be much more difficult for us to handle. So even though it was a little bit cheaper, it would be better for us to go with, again, it wasn't a comparable item that they quoted us.
Okay. All right, you've heard a recommendation about general manager to give him the authority to purchase those sheet pile. Moved by Gavin, second by Scott. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. And if you have any questions, I'll take those, but if not, that's my report, Mr. President.
Engineering report, CPRA. Daniel, do you have anything?
I don't have anything today.
Okay, thank you. Nobody from the Corps, I'm sure. Project engineer, Pisciola and Associates.
Yes, the Rose Ted Gisclair Lock project, so we're still working with the Corps on permitting this. Well, we actually got the Corps permit for this project, and we're working with Nick on getting HMGP funding. We've been talking back and forth with the parish and their consultant about submitting loss evaluations and hydraulic studies. That continues to be ongoing. All we have left to do on this project is that and then right-of-way plans. On Section E North Levee project, Construction Site Specialties is the contractor. He's been off-site for quite some time. We do have Campo and Sons out there taking the material that was deposited on the berm and shaping it into the crown. Campo has got the crown elevation to grade for almost the whole levee except for about 800 to 900 feet. And he's also doing some grading shaping on the berm and also on the inside crown slope. We've asked Construction Site Specialties, we actually demanded them to come back on site via a meeting and via letter. They did show up earlier this week and started pumping out the borrow pit again. Our opinion is kind of like that they're slow walking this thing because he doesn't have a plan on how he's going to finish. He has about 45 to 60 days working left to be finished with what he has with his contract. So, right now, we basically can either put him on default or maybe even issue him another nasty letter and tell him to get on site quickly, or we will declare you in default. By contract, you do have the right to declare him in default now. He hasn't been on site for quite some time. We've issued a demand letter that he report back on site within 15 days and start the project again. He really hasn't done anything significant in that last time period.
So this is something we can bring to the executive committee in a couple weeks and have a firm decision for our May board meeting on how we're going to proceed. And I'll give him a little bit of time to get moving.
That's more than gracious, I think, at this point. But he's missing some good weather that he could be hauling right now.
Yeah, we have to put our foot down on it.
Right.
Right. And the other thing is Campo's doing a good job, and they're moving along very efficiently right now. In a couple of weeks, they're going to run out of dirt to put on the levee. So we'll be completely shut down, and then hurricane season is coming upon us. So he needs to get back on site.
Yeah, we need to move on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we do have pay application number 6 from Campo and Sons LLC in the amount of $78,015, and we do recommend you pay that.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of the engineer to pay Campo and Sons pay application number 6. in the amount of $78,015. Moved by Mac, second by Mr. Rowland. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
On Section A East levy, so we're out on, with the permit application into the state and into the Corps for this project. We're also working with the Corps on their 408 permit review. They did last week give us some comments on our plans and specs and our geotechnical report, which to me was very minimal. We're taking care of those, incorporating those comments as we speak. So I'd envision that we're going to submit everything back to them very shortly for a final review. But we do have to go through full permitting process, which is going to take some time. So we'll continue to work on that. On our emergency gate closure, the Rose Floodgate, TLP Construction is a contractor. They ordered the winches. The winches were a 12-week lead item. We still got about 4 to 6 weeks to go before they show up. And then we'll give them a notice to proceed to install them. And the corner plate repair at the South Floodgate, this is where we had the damage. The boat company has asked to do the repairs. They have all the material in. They're ready to go ahead and put it in. We've scheduled with the Levee District for them to do it on May 5th, 6th, and 7th. So we'll have a closure of the bayou during those 3 days, potentially, for the entire duration of the day from 7 to 5 p.m., for 7 to 7.
And we've already sent out that notice.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, Joe, are we comfortable with waiting another month for that when the E-Nord to send it out? Or-
I'd rather send him another nasty letter now and see how he responds. And if
Okay.
we have to act, then
And
we'll.
then should we get the board maybe to give the executive committee authority that if, in a week, if we have to meet and say, boom, this is it,
You can,
they go with that decision, or can we, Ryan?
I'm going to look at Ryan for, so to put them in default, to put the contractor in default would take a formal board action, correct? So could the board give the authority?
We can give authority if they're in default after this meeting for you to sign on behalf of, or keep to sign on behalf of, to send a letter.
If we decide that,
If we find that they meet the parameters to be in
Okay.
default, yeah, y'all can give yourselves the approval now, yes.
okay. So then I would recommend that we
Let's do
can
that, yeah.
make that decision between now and,
Yeah, I just,
yeah,
right, I don't want to wait.
that we can discuss with Joe, and
Okay,
if the contractor doesn't,
so we need to vote on, okay, the recommendation of our general manager to give the executive committee the authority to yea or nay on that. So, moved by Max, second by Scott, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you very much.
GIS.
Good afternoon, Kevin Desarm with GIS Engineering. Our first project is going to be the A East Bayou Lafourche retention. So we're still coordinating, and I believe Dick is doing most of that coordinating with the landowner on the new alignment. So once that landowner has agreement and firm commitments to Nick, we'll start making those adjustments to the plans and get that alignment moved.
so we presented this alternative alignment to the landowner that would be more affected in this situation, because one of the landowners ended up changing his mind at the 11th hour, didn't want the project on his property anymore after we had already gotten the permitting. So I've requested a meeting with the landowner. This was unfortunately back in January that I requested a meeting with the landowner. And one of the owners who wants to physically be here in person to meet with us, every time I try to find a date, they're out of town, or I'm told, okay, well, we'll get you a firm date next week, and then 2 weeks go by and nothing. So it's been a constant back and forth between emails and phone calls and text messages trying to set up a meeting with these landowners. But they, at least over the phone, they sound agreeable to the idea, so I think it'll just be, I'd like to think it would just be a formality that when we sit down and show them what the project is and where it would run on their property, that they wouldn't have any issues with it, and we can do a quick permit modification and move forward, so.
Just gotta have it.
That's the holdup, landowner.
All right, so that's everything on that one. On the D North ramp lift, so they're making progress. They've gotten the bypass road in, and I believe they're going to start cutting in and working on the actual earthen ramp lift here in the next few days. Or even, might wait till next week after the holiday, but progress is going well. For the Brenton Canal, as Nick said, y'all operated that a couple weeks ago for that storm event. Everything went good. We do have a couple actions to take here. So we have recommendation of final acceptance. Everything was fully functional, as Nick said, and well working. So we do recommend that.
Okay, you've heard a recommendation from engineer to accept the final thing on the where? Gavin, second by Brett, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
And then the next item is the final balancing change order, which is a deductive change order in the amount of $31,367.93, which will be deducted from the total value.
Is what now?
Money back.
Oh, deduct.
It's a deductive change order.
All right, you've heard it before, like deduct.
Don't get excited, wait till the next.
Of our engineer, the balance change order number 2, the amount of $31,367.93. Moved by Scott, second by Mr. Rowland. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
And then the final action to take on this job is pay application number 7 for Garden Environments. This is their final pay app and release of retainage in the amount of $57,881.61.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of engineer. Pay application number 7 to Garden Environments in the amount of $57,881.61. Moved by Mac, second by Brett. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And then final, just a little information on that project. So we've been talking with Nick over the past month or two about the need of a trash screen in front of it. And then with the operations that we did a couple weeks ago, how much flow was actually going through there and the amount of water and the velocity really showed us that there's potential for pulling big logs and stuff into those weir gates. So we do have a quote package currently out on that. And I think we're accepting quotes today, John?
This week.
It says this, okay. So we'll have a quote package and a recommendation for y'all next week on that, but just wanted to, and it's just a simple trash screen, just putting a couple piles, timber piles, and then some timber guides to kind of funnel all the debris that would come towards the school, and then y'all can go and pick it up. And then just keep everything out of the weir gates. Okay, next project is the D South flood wall for Crawfish Farms, Phase 3 improvements. We had the substantial completion inspection of that yesterday. Sea levels wrapped up with that. They did the final concrete pours. Everything looked very good, and we do have a recommendation for that. But first, let me see here. I have the balancing change order, right? Balancing change order number 3 in the amount of $44,170.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation from engineer for the change order number 3 in the amount of $44,170. Moved by Brian, second by Mr. Rowland. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
And then we have their pay app, which is pay app number 4 in the amount of $276,801. And we do recommend that.
Okay, you've heard a recommendation from engineer, pay application number 4 to sea level construction, the amount of $276,811. All in favor? Oh, you got a motion. I'm sorry. Gavin, moved by Gavin, second by Scott. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And then the final one is, like I said, the substantial completion inspection was held yesterday. We do recommend substantial completion be granted. We just ask that that be contingent upon their concrete breaks. So they poured concrete, I believe last Friday was their last concrete pour. We're still waiting to get their 7-day breaks, but we feel that they are deserving of substantial completion pending those breaks being approved.
All right, you heard a recommendation engineer to accept the substantial completion reports. Moved by Matt, second by Mr. Rowland. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
That's it for me. Thank you all.
Okay. Angela Design, Neil?
All right, on the Sea-South section, that contractor, Compo & Sons, is continuing work on the berm, side slopes, and some crown improvements. We're recommending approval of his invoice number 1383 in the amount of $148,680.00.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation engineer to pay Compo & Sons invoice 1383, the amount of $148,680. Move up. Gavin, second by Scott. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
Okay, next project is the B North segment. This is from the Basin Pump Station down to the Golden Meadow Park area. New Gym Construction is working on some protected side improvements on that levee section. We're recommending approval of their invoice number 1049 in the amount of $76,582.50.
Okay, you've heard recommendation of the engineer to pay New Gym Construction invoice 1049, the amount of $76,582.50. Moved by Brian, second by Brett. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
Also on this the same levee segment, we have Compo & Sons working on some flood side maintenance. We're recommending approval of their invoice number 1390 in the amount of $16,867.50.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of engineer. Pay Compo & Sons invoice 1390 in the amount of $16,867.50. Moved by Matt, second by Brett. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Mr. President, since we're in this section, I just wanted to kind of update everyone since it's kind of caught in this photo. We've got some of our equipment. We have an excavator and a dozer working to pull more material out of the Borrow Canal here. So we marked an area that would get us as close to the toe of the levee as we safely could get, so we could stockpile more of that material from the Borrow Canal for future use. So that's what, if anybody passes by the Golden Meadow Park and sees some equipment pulling out of the canal, that's what's going on. Is we've got our guys there pulling material out of the Borrow Canal, and then we've got a dozer that's processing that for drying and stockpiling.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. That's what we had. Delta Coast, anyone have Delta Coast?
Good afternoon, Kyle Pierce, Delta Coast, on behalf of Morganza to the Gulf. Just a couple of things to keep you guys up to date on is they're going to be awarding sea level to do the reach out pipeline structure and bridge. That's tomorrow night. They'll be awarding that. They also, Terrebonne Levee has agreed to load rate the bridge at Dufresne Forum crossing the canal. Came by last week to pick up the plans for that bridge. We're going to put all that together, and Terrebonne Levee has agreed to pay for that rating. That's pretty much all I have, guys.
All right. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, thank you.
The other item that Delta Coast is working for us is managing our water monitoring system. Right now, it's a constant back and forth with facility planning and control, who determines when we get that money from capital outlay. They sent a last bit of requested information having to do with the Telecommunications Act that I forwarded to Ryan and all for their office to look over and provide some feedback. It took a while to get this guy to understand what we were doing because it's not a standard construction job. And so that's been the delay there, is the state not quite being able to put what we're trying to do in their little box. So hopefully we'll get some movement on that by the next board meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Allsop, anyone hear from Allsop?
Stevie Smith with All South called me earlier today to give his update. He regrets he couldn't be here. But for the Reach K terrace repairs, reimbursement requests have been submitted to GOSEP and FEMA. There were a couple of cost reasonableness questions regarding equipment that have now been resolved, so the reimbursement request is in process there. Then on the Reach K levee itself, there's been no activity recently, but the funding for the next phase is part of the CPRA's annual plan for next year. And so we expect funding after this current legislative session. The CPRA puts forth the annual plan in January, February timeframe, and then submits it to the state legislature for approval during the regular legislative session. So that money that's approved during this current session will be available starting July 1st at the new fiscal year.
Okay. All right, moving on, legal permits and right-of-way, Mitch is not here, we had anything? Okay. Mr. Board Attorney, nothing, okay. Finance Committee, Monty wasn't here, but we just.
We reviewed the invoices and recommend to pay them as presented.
For recommendation on Finance Committee to pay our bills. Moved by Brian, second by Brett, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Personnel Committee. Gavin?
Yeah, Mr. President, we discussed a few items. The first was we did a 6-month performance evaluation on an employee. Second was it was recommended that we do some revisions to our personnel policies and procedures manual. Nick, I believe there's some voting that needs to take place regarding that.
Just to accept it, yes. So, yeah, the recommendation would be, we added a few items that have been kind of standard practice or that are required by the state after some review. And we're also looking to require new employees to undergo physicals before being hired. So the Personnel Committee discussed all those and would recommend incorporating those into the personnel manual. So that would be for you guys to approve.
Okay, you've heard the recommendation of Nick and Gavin. Moved by Mac, second by Brett, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
And then finally, we discussed salary adjustments for employees, and I'll defer to Nick to.
So we had, at the last executive committee meeting, we discussed a couple employees that have recently changed positions, like moving up in the, I guess, the hierarchy of our system. And they've taken on those new duties, but we hadn't compensated them when they moved up to those higher tiers. And so it was also recommended at that executive committee meeting that we do a one-time adjustment as sort of a longevity bonus for our employees for doing a great job. We have a great crew. We want to encourage them to be here. And so the executive committee deferred that to the personnel committee. We reviewed a compensation adjustment package, and the personnel committee is recommending to have the board approve those adjustments.
Across the board?
Yes.
We've heard a recommendation.
There are, well, let me clarify that. There were a couple, the ones that had the specific job changes,
Yes.
they're moving up a little more, but all of our hourly employees are getting some adjustment.
All right, I'll move.
Moved by Mac, second by Scott, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. That's it, huh?
Yeah, that ends our.
Any old business? Any old business? Any new business? Any need for executive session? Need a motion. Moved by Scott, second by Brett, that we adjourn, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Thanks.